WRVA. All right, I had a little bit of a snafu on Facebook and YouTube, but we fixed it. We're now streaming live, and we are excited to welcome our next guest. This is an exclusive interview, one-on-one, here on News Radio WRVA. Yesterday, the courts were filled with arguments for and against the gerrymandering bill that was approved last week by the Virginia voters. Was it even proper to be on the ballot in the referendum form that it was? And are the maps that they've drawn up legal? Well, two court cases were heard yesterday, one at the Supreme Court of Virginia. I was there to witness that. Another one was in a Richmond district court. One of the plaintiffs in that court, that suit, is our very own Congressman Rob Wittman, who represents where I live in Virginia 1, and he's our guest here on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Rich. Great to be with you this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get your reaction. Yesterday was I believe it was a preliminary hearing in front of a judge here in Richmond. You and John McGuire have a lawsuit talking about the maps that were drawn in this gerrymandered redistricting. I won't put anything pejorative on it. I'll leave it at that so we can be completely fair and honest. But the maps do have quite a bit of Northern Virginia influence. In fact, one point of Fairfax County, I think 5 of the districts stretch across 10 miles. So they make sure they get their fingers all the way up in Northern Virginia. Tell me about the lawsuit that you and John McGuire have joined, and what your thoughts of yesterday's ruling is.
Absolutely. Well, Rich, the law says districts are supposed to be compact. And the reason you want them to be compact is you don't want, people from very disparate geographic regions being drawn into the same district. And that's exactly what the General Assembly did. And they did it for one purpose and one purpose only, as a partisan power grab. This is not about folks getting adequate representation. This is about disenfranchising voters, disenfranchising anybody that's not a hardcore Democrat, disenfranchising folks in rural areas. This map, these maps, the way they're drawn, disenfranchise about 2.1 million people and over 56 counties. And they're doing this purely for political purposes. This is not what's good for Virginia. It's not what's good for Virginia voters. And by the narrowest of margins, this passed. And the reason that it passed is they had to lie about it. They had to tell people a blatant lie to say that this is temporary. It is not temporary. And then to say that it's about restoring fairness. Nobody can look at the map to go from 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans to 10 Democrats and 1 Republican and say somehow that restores fairness. I would say it's the opposite. It destroys fairness. And that's essentially what we're arguing is the law says they're supposed to be compact. They're supposed to be communities of interest. And you look at some of these districts that, draw in places like the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula, farming, fishing, and forestry areas, into Alexandria and Arlington, where there is nothing in common. There is no compactness there because there's this thin little string of spaghetti on the map that runs up into Alexandria and Arlington and then runs into the vast land expanses in the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula. So what we're arguing is that this is clearly counter to the law, and the courts should take that into consideration. And what the General Assembly did to just flout the law and flout the Constitution. I mean, they were clearly there in violation of that. And listen, I'm confident that the court will uphold that indeed the General Assembly did not follow the law. And I believe that, if we do not stand by the law in Virginia, if the General Assembly can at their own whim, not follow the law, not follow the Constitution, then where are we as a Commonwealth? That's what I think people need to ask themselves. Have we just devolved into lawlessness to where it doesn't matter, or just going to do anything, and the party in power just runs roughshod over anybody that they don't agree with? And it's interesting. Now all of a sudden, Governor Spanberger is, I want to be bipartisan. Well, she's not bipartisan. The bottom line is she lied. She said gerrymandering is detrimental to democracy, which it is, and then she turns around. The first bill she signs is these gerrymandered maps. So, all of a sudden, after the harm is done, all of a sudden they want to make nice and expect people to just forget about their lies and deceit. And that's what disturbs me about this. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that the law in Virginia is upheld. And listen, I believe the courts will do that.
Okay, let me separate everything because I don't want to conflate all the different lawsuits. Yesterday,
Sure.
I went to the Supreme Court and I asked the lawyer representing the General Assembly. Is this about legal precedent and procedure, or is this about the election? He says that he told me it was about precedent and procedure, had nothing to do with the outcome of the law. So we can move out the outcome of the law, because I think yours is the same way. The outcome is the outcome, and we can't argue with what happened, but we can argue what led up to where we are today. So let's go back to this whole idea of compact compact districts.
Yes.
Why is it important to have a district where the people all have that same common interest, as opposed to one that is so spread out that you have urban centers and suburban areas and rural areas and quite honestly, 3 different lifestyles?
Well, that's exactly right, Rich. And that's why compactness is important, because what you want to make sure is the person that's representing you doesn't forget about issues there in that district. And so you look at the way some of these districts are designed with the majority of the population in Northern Virginia. I mean, that individual that represents those districts, will never come to the rural areas because they don't have to. All they have to do is to stay there in Alexandria and Arlington, where in one of the districts that's drawn, 68% of the population is there in Northern Virginia. The rest of the population is in the rural areas. So what happens if in those areas people say, we want to do away with farming, we want to do away with fishing, we want to do away with forestry? And that individual says, well, gosh, if I want to go back in office and I guess I'm going to do away with that, I'll forget about the other, portion of the population there that's not in the majority.
And they become not represented.
Exactly. Yeah, it completely disenfranchises them. And then that really puts in place what's called the tyranny of the majority. All of a sudden, the majority rules and folks in these rural areas get completely forgotten about. And then, two, with these districts being as strongly partisan as they are, then the individual there also doesn't have to engage with anybody that has a different ideological viewpoint. And that's why compactness is critical. And that's why the current districts that are drawn, by the way, by the Virginia Supreme Court were determined as being some of the fairest in the nation. And those indeed are, for the most part, compact. And that's why it's important to have that compactness component.
Okay, so what happened yesterday? Because I was to the Supreme Court, and then I read up on the lawsuit that you and Congressman McGuire have. The judge, it was rather interesting, the judge's ruling here in Richmond, because he threw out the idea that our Constitution has the compact districts. He says, well, the General Assembly could do what they want, is the way that I interpreted his ruling, going against what this Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia says.
That's correct, and I would adamantly disagree with the judge. There is a component of compactness there that the General Assembly has to abide by. And listen, it's alarming when the court says, "Oh, the General Assembly can do anything that they want." I mean, if that's the way the court looks at it, then what is the use of the court? Why does that judge exist if he says, "Oh, listen, the General Assembly can do whatever they want"? We know that you have 3 branches of government, 3 co-equal branches of government, and we know that when the executive branch or the legislative branch steps outside the bounds of the law and the Constitution, the courts are there to make sure that they operate within those bounds. If the court says, "Oh, hey, guess what? No problem. They can do whatever they want," then to me that is an abdication of the court's responsibility.
We lose one of the 3 branches that we have that keeps check on the other. So now that
Yes.
and you took a defeat yesterday at the hands of the Richmond judge yesterday, what's your next step?
Well, we have several other options out there available to us, and we're going to be pursuing those. I have a couple of that we're working on right now as we speak, and when those cases get filed, I'll make sure that I comment on them. But in the meantime, we're constructing those, and the Supreme Court obviously has cases termed Tazewell 1 and Tazewell 2. The first Tazewell court case is about the 4 premises of where the General Assembly did not meet the requirements of the Constitution or the law of Virginia. And then Tazewell 2 is the actual injunction that was issued to stop the application of the referendum.
Can I ask one question? This
Sure.
referendum, we have a constitutional amendment that says we will have bipartisan drawing of our districts. This referendum, was this a referendum to change the Constitution or to temporarily suspend the Constitution? Because now I'm hearing yesterday for the first time ever, people are talking about it as if this were a constitutional amendment and we're changing our Constitution.
Well, we are. This does change the Constitution. It is a permanent fixture in the Constitution. So when people,
sir, I'm sorry, let me interrupt you for a second. Then why in the world wasn't I told that? Nobody brought that up during the election. I didn't see one ad from the yes folks that said you're being asked. I was told we're gonna make this fair. We're going to make this right. We're going to answer back. We're going to check Donald Trump. Not once did they ever say, and I don't think I said it. I saw it on the ballot language. It said we're changing the Constitution.
No, that's exactly right, Rich. It was misleading. It was not truthful, and all those things we're going to argue are part of why this is against the law and against the Constitution. This is a permanent change to the Constitution of Virginia. This doesn't go away.
So that's not temporary.
That's right. Yeah. And that's why I tell folks, I said, show me anywhere in any constitution where a change to the Constitution is temporary. So that in and of itself is misleading and a blatant lie. And then to say somehow that this restores fairness, it's counterintuitive. And the challenge is that, and of course we argue this, the way the amendment is worded, the law says you're supposed to be able to word this in a non-biased and nonpartisan way. And that's completely the opposite here. You notice too that there were no maps there. So, they drew the maps and then guess what? They didn't want to show anybody. So when we showed people the maps, they were like, what? And they said that's not fair. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. And a lot of people were deceived. A lot of people said, oh, I got to be in favor of this. This restores fairness. That sounds good. And when you describe it like that, then all of a sudden people go, well, yeah, I got to be for that.
I got to be fairness, sir.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know about what it was like when you were a kid. It's like that one kid that wanted to call permanent dibs on riding shotgun or permanent dibs on that seat. There is no such thing as permanent dibs. There's no such thing as a temporary change to a Constitution. It's either a change of the Constitution or it's not.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And this too, again, this provision in the Constitution, if it's allowed to stand, which I don't believe it will be allowed to stand, but if it's allowed to stand, Rich, this goes into, at the very least, 2032, because allegedly, they will then have the Bipartisan Redistricting Commission come back in 2030. Now, I don't know if anybody out there believes that the Democrats, once they gain power, are going to voluntarily say, oh, yeah, we're going to give it up now. I think that's specious on their part to say that they will do everything that they can to hold on to that power. And to me, that's why this is even more problematic. And that is, you have now permanently disenfranchised rural Virginia and disenfranchised any independent voter or Republican voter that doesn't agree with this extreme Democrat viewpoint, which is what's predominating now in Richmond and what they want to now perpetrate with this constitutional amendment.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you coming on, giving us your thoughts after yesterday's court ruling. Please let me know. Send me a text or come back on the air. Let me know what your next steps are so we can make sure the people know. I appreciate it, and I will catch up with you soon, sir.
Thanks so much, Rich. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Take care. Congressman Rob Wittman joining us here on News Radio WRVA. That's WRVA exclusive. You'll only hear here on the Voice of